get started. Let's get started. The African Continent Free Trade Area. Okay, today we're going to be talking about a very simple topic, very simple subject: the African Continent Free Trade Area, also known as AfTA. Okay, let me just quickly get this to Google. Hopefully, I get the wrong pronunciation for this. All right, cool. We got it. AfTA, African Startup and Businesses. Let's go. All right, today we're going to be talking about a very simple topic: the African Continent Free Trade Area, the digital trade, and why it matters for African people. So that's what we're talking about today: the African Continental Free Trade Area in a digital space, and why it matters for African people. All right, Africa is building the largest free trade market in the world, and most Africans don't even have an idea of where it's happening and why it's happening. Okay, in 2026, the African Continental Free Trade Area is focusing on digital trade across borders, payments, and removing the barriers that have kept African economies fragmented for like decades. This is not just a government policy. Okay, that's something we need to understand. This could affect how you make money, how you invest, and how Africa grows as an economic superpower. All right. So basically, what I'm going to be discussing in this video is I'm going to break down what AfTA is about, why digital trade is a game changer, and how the ordinary African person can benefit from starting today, literally starting today. All right, just a little bit a background of myself. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a speaker. According to Google, I'm a non-technical founder. I work as a help desk manager, but at the same time, also I share insights on business, entrepreneurship, personal development around the African continent as well as within South Africa, where I'm currently based. I share ideas on African startups and landscapes on Medium as well as Instagram. For those of you guys who are interested in following me and finding out more about me, you can find me on Instagram. It's spokes03. My LinkedIn is levimisenga, and I'm also the founder of Smart Money Catalyst. And my contact details is levimisenga at outlook.com. Should you have any questions or collaborations, I'm going to put it all in the description box. All right, with that said, let us get into it. So, the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is also known as AfTA, is an agreement between African countries to create one massive free trade market. Okay, to simply put, this is basically an idea of bringing African markets together to make it into a massive free trade market. Okay, that's the honest simplest term I could use to describe what AfTA is about. Okay, out of 55 African nations, only 50 have already ratified the agreement. That means most of Africa has agreed to trade with fewer barriers, fewer tariffs, and fewer restrictions. Okay, think of it like Africa is trying to become its own European Union, where goods, services, money, and people can move more freely across the borders. This is what we've always been crying about. This is what we've always been asking for our government to implement. Right now, Africa trades less than 20% within itself. Okay, Europe trades more than 60% internally. That means Africans buy more from China, Europe, and America than from each other. Okay, AfTA is designed to change that, and that's why it is one of the most important economic project in Africa's history. Okay, let us keep that in mind. So these are the big focuses that we're going to look at within AfTA. Okay, in 2026, obviously we have to look at digital trade. Now in 2026, the focus is on the protocol on digital trade. This protocol is about making digital businesses across African borders easy. Okay, that includes cross-border payments, e-commerce, digital services, fintech, online platforms, as well as marketplaces. Okay, imagine being in South Africa and paying someone in Nigeria instantly, cheaply, and without crazy bank fees. Imagine selling products from Congo to Kenya without complicated paperwork. This is what digital trade integration is trying to achieve. So what is border friction? I've heard this term before, but maybe you might have heard this term before as well, but you want to understand what exactly is border friction. This is something that is spoken quite a lot of within our continent. Okay, so for decades, Africa has suffered from something called border friction. Border friction means anything that makes it hard to trade between countries. This includes different currencies, slow and expensive bank transfers, slow corruption and bureaucracies at borders, complex custom rules, sorry, lack of digital payment, as well as payment systems. All right, these are what we will call border frictions. In some cases, it has been easier for an African country to trade with Europe than with its next door neighbors. All right, think about it. That's how difficult it is to actually trade within our own continent. So what AfTA is basically going to do is AfTA's digital trade protocol is designed to remove these frictions and to make Africa operate like one connected digital economy. How this is going to help the ordinary African person. Now let's talk about what this means for you. The ordinary African person first of all is going to experience fast and cheaper payments. If you're a freelancer, a designer, if you're a coder, if you're a writer or an online creator getting paid Africa, across Africa, it becomes easier for you. No more crazy fees, delays, or blocked transfers. Secondly, you'll get more customers if you sell clothes, digital products, courses, remote jobs, courses or services. You can now sell to 1.4 billion Africans, not just your local city or country. Okay, thirdly, there'll be more job opportunities. Okay, companies will hire across the African borders. Remote jobs will increase. African startups will scale faster. And fourth, what we'll have is we would have cheaper products with fewer trade barriers. Goods can move freely. That means lower prices and more opportunities for consumers. This is how economic integration directly affects your daily life as a consumer as well as a potential producer. Okay, what is economic growth for Africa at this point? When Africa becomes one big market, investors see opportunity. Instead of seeing 44 small fragmented economies, they see one massive unified market. This leads to more foreign investment, more African startups scaling continent wide, stronger African companies competing globally, increased GDP growth. Okay, the African Continental Free Trade Area could help Africa industrialize, digitalize, and move from exporting raw materials to exporting services as well as technologies. Now, how Africans can invest and take advantage of this is the African Continental Free Trade Area is not just for the governments or billionaires. You have to think about it, because when opportunities like this come along, people tend to think that it is mostly just for rich people or people of higher status or elites, people in government in this case. But what we're actually learning is that this particular protocol is also for ordinary Africans. Ordinary Africans can benefit from this in multiple ways. Okay, to name a few, first of all, you get to invest in African startups, fintech, e-commerce, logistics, and digital platforms, which will eventually explode. And number two, what you'll have is you we're able to build pan-African businesses. Start a brand that sells across Africa, in fashion, for example, digital content, consulting, education, or tech services. You can learn, thirdly, you can learn digital skills, coding, design, writing, marketing, and AI. These skills will be in high demand across the African borders. Fourth, what you'll have is you invest in African markets. So as Africa integrates stock markets, crypto adoption, and venture capital will begin to grow, this will give opportunity for African people to actually invest into those type of markets. Okay, so the people who position themselves very early will definitely ride the African economy wave, which is eventually coming. And again, this is projected to be something that's to start within 2026. Now, why is this huge for the African youth? Okay, let's state one fact. Okay, Africa has the youngest population in the world. That's one fact we know for sure. It's been like that for the past 20 years, and it's most likely going to be like this for the next few years to come. Okay, so what after digital trade gives to young Africans is something powerful, a continental playing field. Okay, you don't have to build a business only in Cape Town, Lagos, or Nigeria, or in fact in Kinshasa. You can build for the entire African continent. So as young people, we gotta start looking at things from a broader spec instead of looking at it from a province or country or small city or small hometown. You gotta look at things for like a larger scale, right? If I'm building something, I have to realize that I'm not only building it for my community, but I'm building it for the continent at larger scale. All right, so this is a once in a generation opportunity. All right, so the African youth could actually create the biggest next Amazon or the biggest next Stripe or the biggest next Alibaba, but as long as it is focused on the African consumers, which is the main goal. All right, so let's really just look at now the reality check of this whole thing, because what we know is when things like this come up, we gotta understand also the challenges that comes with it. We obviously have to state the fact that within our continent we do have many challenges. Of course, there are going to be a lot of challenges. Number one, we're going to have problems of infrastructure. Okay, the infrastructure is still weak in many countries. We know that to be a fact. Our governments, they move very slowly. Okay, you have governments, which is very true to be, but our governments who are quite old and they do not understand some of these digital systems that are basically coming up. Okay, internet access is uneven in most countries, in most places. Policy does not always match the reality. Okay, you have these government people going into offices, administrations, coming up with policies, putting it into place, but then when they put it out there, the audience, the general audience at large, not really accept it, nor does it come into reality. So we tend to forget most of these policies that are brought up or made up by this government and current administration. So what uh, after is powerful, okay? After is powerful, but execution will determine whether it becomes Africa's EU, for example, um, or EU moment, or just another policy document. What we're trying to avoid is we're trying to avoid this kind of policies to be created, put into place, and then only for it to fall down or fall on deaf ears. This is why we are going to be evangelizing and preaching about it every day so that people understand this is the new change. This, in fact, is what we would refer to as the new world order for our continent. This is a must. It must come to reality. It must come to fruition. Okay, the future of Africa's digital economy by 2030, Africa could be a global digital trade. We're talking about 4 years from now, if I'm not mistaken. 4 years from now, we could be the biggest digital trade hub. All right, Africa's tech giants could compete with they could compete globally. Okay, cross-border African companies could dominate fintech, logistics, entertainment, as well as education. After digital trade is the foundation of Africa's economic renaissance. That is something that we need to understand. So, my question to you is, if you are Africa, first of all, you need to understand that this matters to you. Okay, whether you are in the diaspora, wherever you may find yourself, this matters to you. Okay, what you need to do now is you need to learn about the African markets. You need to study the markets, study whatever market you find yourself in, or whatever markets you're familiar with. You need to study them. Okay, you need to build digital skills, which is another very important thing. That is why I chose the route to go into IT, because without any skills in IT, you are basically limited to what you can do, and everything is becoming digitalized. So you must understand that if you don't build any digital skills, you're going to be slowed you're going to slow down. Okay, you're going to be held back. Okay, you need to start businesses that scales across Africa. Okay, and I think just to name a few businesses that are most likely to scale are logistic businesses in education. Okay, online education is going to become rampant. but you need to start what we need to start is generating ideas within those spaces where we create businesses that are again going to scale. Give me a second. Start businesses that are going to scale within education, logistics, or any other business that includes having to trade cross borders. Okay, invest in African startups and opportunities, right? So, I do believe there's this website called the Startup List where a lot of companies are listed, a lot of startup companies are listed within the African continent. It will be very wise to go on that website and actually start looking at companies that are new come ups or newer coming up companies and start looking into the ideas that these people are featuring. What exactly can you take from that and actually try and invest into it? Okay, so the people who understand these trends early will be Africa's next founders, investors, as well as leaders. I think overall I've explained quite a lot within this video, but if you found this video to be very valuable, okay, this is my last point, and I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna shoot right off and go eat some chicken wings. All right. If you find this video to be very valuable, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone. Share with anyone who needs to understand the African economy and the future of the African continent economy. All right. Cool. This is Levy. All right. This is Levy, known as Spokes, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for tuning in.